Welcome to the Reclaim Leader podcast. I'm Jason Tucker.
And I'm Jesse Skiffington.
We're two pastors in the trenches who are passionate about church health for greater gospel impact.
We share the ups and downs of ministry, strategies that worked for us,
and some that didn't.
Best practices and practical tools for church leadership.
The goal, to help all of our churches flourish. Let's get started.
See another sunrise, sing a little song.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reclaim Leader podcast. It's so good to be with you today. Happy St. Patrick's Day. If you're listening in real time, the luck of the Irish be with you. It's St. Patrick's Day is a big deal here.
Yeah.
I mean, parades. It's just an excuse for people to just party, and they take full advantage of it.
They do, yeah. East Coast especially, right? It's a thing out here, not quite the same as where you are, Jason, but yeah.
No, it's great. We love it. So, yeah, Easter, as we're getting now we're getting closer to Easter, and we thought maybe this would be a good time to talk about Easter, because Easter, it may not be as big as Christmas, at least in the Northeast. Christmas kind of rules as far as outreach goes, because everybody participates in Christmas on some level. So I say Christmas is for culture and Easter is for Christians. I don't really mean it that way, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's still a big opportunity to get people who are looking for a church mostly. And I think the in-reach is really good. And that is, Easter will attract the folks that only come to your church occasionally. And there's an opportunity to engage them in maybe a deeper or more consistent way. So how can we think strategically about reaching and retaining Easter guests? That's this episode. We're going to talk about preaching next week. So I don't know. I mean, listen, pastors, I'm sure you've already started prepping and planning, and maybe this will help you as you're thinking through how do we maximize this opportunity, which I think I'm always thinking about. It's like, how do we make the most of this and not treat it like, oh yeah, we just do what we always do and it'll be nice, but I don't know. I think there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, for sure. And, it's a unique window of time, and whether we think it's the best thing for people to only show up on Christmas or Easter and Easter or not, it's just the reality, right? So let's take advantage of the opportunity that is in front of us and think, what can we do just to really think in terms of there's going to be more people, and we have an opportunity to connect and then help them to circle back in, hopefully, if they've been drifting away or if they're maybe new to the area and looking for a church to go, you know what, I think this guy, Jason, he seems reasonable enough. And, his sermon wasn't atrocious. And these, the people here were pretty nice. Maybe we should come back next week and try it again. Like that's, if we're thinking about what the win is, maybe, hey, coming back and trying it again, maybe that's the kind of the key takeaway or the hope for a lot of those people.
Absolutely. And I think what we really want to get to, here's what I really want to get to, is the fact that I don't want to make church relevant for the sake of relevance or trying to be edgy or cool or whatever we think that is, or the whole fog machine skinny jeans critique.
Yeah.
Right. But as much as I joke around and say that, if fog machines and skinny jeans is a reflection of what's going to connect with people, I'd say go for it. That's just not anything I'm going to do. But I think what I care most about is, how am I helping people to feel at home when they come here for the first time, or maybe first time in a long time, and feel like they're welcomed. We've thought of them. We're expecting them. Because I think what that does is it frees them up to actually pay attention to the gospel. When they're not worried about, oh, where am I going to park, or where am I supposed to bring the kids, or what do I do next? If they're confused, I think that confusion sort of gets in the way, possibly, of how we're hoping to reach them with the gospel. And I just think if you can clean up that stuff and create a nice, welcoming environment, I think it draws them in. It's sort of like, I talk about this in the book when I talk about worship, but it's sort of like when you're focused on something that isn't working, it's really hard. Like if you get a first time liturgist or singer or something. You ever get somebody up front and they're just really, really nervous, and the whole congregation feels their nerves.
Mhm.
And then you get this vicarious nervousness or embarrassment for them, and you're just pulling for them. You're like, come on. You
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
But what happens? That takes you out of worship.
Mhm.
And now you're thinking about that. So I'm all about, how do we get rid of the distractions around worship, especially on Easter Sunday, and create an experience that just draws them directly into the gospel?
Yeah, I love it. So we're going to look at 5 kind of key focus areas that we can, I don't know, I'm sure there's more things to aim at, but these are just some that we think are important, and we're going to walk through them. And just hopefully this gets you thinking in the direction of how do we set our Easter weekend up for success, and really thinking in terms of the folks that God's going to send our way. So let's dive into these, Jason, and explore them.
All right. So the first area is first impressions. And that is how we just putting our best foot forward when people are coming into the building. And I think, I don't know, for some people that doesn't sound like church, because they want to go to a theological truth about the ecclesia and about the body of Christ and what's really important in worshiping God. And they're right. However, we're also a sociological reality where things like welcoming and all of that matters as well. So I'm talking about those things at the same time. But first impressions, let's start with the real way everybody visits your church. They're visiting you digitally first. So let's talk about our digital environments. Is our website easy? Is it appealing? Do people know their next steps? Is it guest friendly, or is it guest optimized? And I think that's more of a long-term question for your team thinking about your web strategy. But I think, in my opinion, websites are to be optimized to outsiders. That's not everybody in church feels that. There's a lot of folks in our church who would disagree with me and say, we need more things for us.
You got to give us the resource. Yeah.
But, and you may not be able to change a lot with your website between now and Easter, but maybe you can change some art, or maybe you could change a couple of the photos or something where it's easy to navigate, appealing, and people know the next steps.
Yeah. And I would say along that line is, don't bury the lead. If it's Easter's coming up, make sure that's very clear and obvious. Even if the rest of your website needs work and whatever, make that the lead. Don't bury the lead and make them go hunting for the events page and when are the Easter services. Figure out a way to get that front and center and as an invitational way. Because, you think about it, if somebody's Googling churches in the area and they happen to click on your church and they get to your website, we want it to be something they can quickly and easily find what they're looking for as much as possible. And I'm with you, Jason. I really think of our church website as a digital billboard. It has more content than just like a billboard would, but it's really oriented around what to expect when you first come and who are we? And here's a little bit about the pastor and a sermon that you can watch, so it's just helping them get a sense of who we are and what we're like as much as that's possible online, so that they go, you know what, we should try that church. We should go there. Let's give it a shot.
What do you think? I mean, this idea just came to me, but what do you think if a church, let's say that thinking about online worship, and they think, well, it's maybe not our best foot forward. I kind of wonder if it would be worth the investment to hire some people to do your service for a couple of weeks leading up to Easter.
Yeah.
Just to put your best foot forward. Not everybody has a budget for that, but if you do, maybe that's a nice way of spending some money as you're doing your invite to Easter. If you're leading people to your webpage, maybe you have some just some really dialed in worship services that you can showcase who you really are.
Yeah, or if there's a part of the service, like for some reason the audio is tough during the singing or the musical part, maybe you just trim it down to the sermon for the piece that gets, we've done that really throughout the pandemic. And because we have our sanctuaries, the audio is really tough. It's very live. It's a very bouncy room. And so to get a good, presentation out of it it's a challenge. So maybe you pick kind of the best part and put that front foot forward or whatever. But I don't hate that idea. We're always looking to, that continuous improvement kind of idea. How do we how do we make this better? And one phrase that we've used a ton around here, Jason, is who's representing the voice of the person who's not here yet.
Yeah, I love
So as
that.
you're looking at your website, go, if I was brand new and I didn't know anything about this church, what would my impression be? What would I think to do next? Would I feel like I have the information I need? So having those kind of outside eyes is important, but it's also hard because we're used to dealing with the people who are inside. And I think it's helpful for us to kind of pull up to that bigger picture and think in terms of outsiders.
Yeah. So first impressions, digital environment, and then second, your physical environment.
Yeah.
And this is one that every church can do, and that is your building clean? Is stuff sitting out like the hallways a storage locker? How's your signage look? We put up temporary banners every year at Easter and just like, join us for Easter, whatever. But we even think about little things like we just made a change to our Easter banner that was getting printed. Instead of saying celebrate Easter at Tower Hill, and then we had our worship time, we said you're invited to Easter at Tower Hill. So little things that we thought were more welcoming for our physical environment, we're going to do. And just treat your church. It's like your home, like you're expecting company. Just make sure things are cleaned up, freshened up, get rid of the clutter, and be ready to welcome people as guests.
Just push it all into the closet. That's, I mean, we have
exactly right.
We got all these teenager shoes hanging out by our front door. When people are coming over, I just dump them into the coat closet. I mean, like sometimes we do those kinds of things because we want to be hospitable for our guests. And so thinking about, where to park, or if your entrance is hard to find or not, like just having even people be out there helping, even if that's not your typical practice, just a good thing on Easter to kind of take a few extra steps and help your guests feel really welcome. One thing that we started doing, we have these TVs on a stand that we turn sideways so they're vertical, and they just have a welcome video that we've worked on. And so there's like this sort of like the upcoming sermon for today, and we're glad you're here, and just little things to say, we're thinking about you and we're glad that you've come, and here's what you do next, and that kind of deal.
Yeah. And then guest services. So if you have some folks who, and you could call, they don't have to be called guest services, but you have welcomers, whoever that is, that are your people that welcome everybody, just make sure from parking lot to pew or chair, that they are ready, that they're prepared to welcome people, not to over welcome. And you can look past, I'll put in the show notes some other guest services episodes we've done. Yeah. But again, those first 7 to 10 minutes are really crucial. Just make sure that everything's clear, and that. Let me back up a little bit. So some churches have challenges with their building. You mentioned this, where they have a really awkward entrance, or it's just not optimized for what they want. You can solve those problems temporarily with people. If you have good people, good welcoming people stationed to help people get through the awkward transition, it works. It works. And then until such time as you could remodel, or maybe you have the budget to remodel, maybe that's years away, you could solve that problem with really good people. So think about who has a gift of hospitality and welcome. And even if you just put those folks out on Easter, it can make a big, big difference from people feeling engaged.
Because uncertainty is unsettling, right? So if you're not sure where to go or what to do, you just feel kind of at odds, and maybe people are being brave by even showing up. And so how do we set them up for success? And I think you're right. That people can solve a lot of that, even if that's on an every week practice. Just recruiting kind of an extra set of folks to be available and a welcoming presence is a good idea.
Yeah. Also, another thing I see churches do with first impressions is they offer some sort of special food on Easter. Like I've seen churches do the traditional hot cross buns and all of that. We don't do food typically. It's just kind of a nightmare for us logistically to pull off because of how packed our services are to one another. But if your church can do it, I think that's a great thing to do on Easter. I think it's
like
fun.
A pancake breakfast or stuff like that.
Exactly right. I think it's great.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Okay, so first impressions. We spent a lot of time on that. And just real quick, number 2 is logistics. And I don't have a lot on this other than to just make sure you know who's doing what and when, and what are the volunteer expectations for Easter morning.
Yeah.
because you may have regular guest services people and their usual job is to, let's say, hand out a bulletin and wave at people. But on Easter, you want them to do something different. Make sure they're clearly, they're giving clear instructions and that they understand what their responsibility is. And that goes for everybody who is serving in the building on Easter Sunday. And you may even want to consider, if your schedule allows for it, if you could do kind of a huddle before the worship morning starts and just kind of a rah-rah speech and make sure any questions are answered. I really do think it's a great team builder and it sets everybody up for success. And I think what happens is we just got so many other things on our mind is that we forget that not all the volunteers know what we know.
That's right. Or we've thought it all the way through, but we haven't exactly communicated it clearly. And so it's just that last huddle. I like that. We call it checking signals. We get together, we check signals, we pray. And we do that every Sunday before the first service, just to make just to go, are we all on the same page with the order of the service, with, the greeters, with the kids, all the things that are going on. And it's helpful for people, especially on Sundays when things are going to be different.
Yeah.
We do the same routine almost every week, but on Sundays like Easter, it's going to be a little different just with the volume of people. So we need to make sure we're all on the same page. So I like that idea.
And I'll throw this in kind of back. I was just thought about first impressions, but in the worship service to make sure on the front end that you're welcoming guests in a way that doesn't make it feel like you're judging them for being guests on Easter. You know what I mean?
Please. Yeah.
I mean, there's some pastors, they'll just come out and say like, okay, Easter Christians, it's good to see you finally, I just don't think that's
how to win friends and influence people. Do not
great strategy.
That page. Yeah. No, so true. Yeah. It's just a warm welcome. We're so glad you're here. If you do he is risen indeed. So, as a Christian community on Easter, this is something we all say together. Just make it guest friendly and maybe a little explanatory notes around a few of the things that you're doing.
That's a great point, Jesse. And that's a good reminder to me. For our traditional service, we do the he is risen indeed. And it's always after the fact. I think, you know what? Somebody may not have known because it's not written anywhere. It's just something we do. Yeah. But just to explain it quick in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. And if you have a screen, put it up on the screen. It doesn't hurt to have a call and response. It's as simple of one as you can get, but don't assume. And it's kind of the same with like the Apostles' Creed or any of those kinds of things. Like just say, hey, and if this is new for you, this is why we do this. It's one sentence. It doesn't take up hardly any time, but it helps people feel at home and welcome.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's jump to 3, which is preaching. The good thing about Easter is that, it's the Christian faith. It's the whole reason that we follow Jesus because he rose from the dead. So, but I don't know. I think there's a temptation because we're so familiar with these passages. There might be a temptation to try to get cute with the message or to take kind of like a nuanced view to make it, because we feel like we need to make it more compelling or interesting or I don't know what it is. But I just always say, give them the gospel. Yeah. Give them the mac and cheese. I don't think there's time for infralapsarian or supralapsarian thoughts, just make it accessible.
I think we should talk about the end times. I think that would be really important. What's your eschatology that you're bringing with you into this space today?
I mean, listen, your theology is going to inform everything you do, but at the same time, how do we just make it accessible, especially for a guest?
Yeah.
I think one thing to do is aim for a shorter message. That's always hard for us, Jesse. I'll speak for myself. It's hard for me.
No, it's true.
It's harder to write a short.
A lot to say, Jason. As everybody who ever listened to this podcast knows, they're like, this episode could have been a third.
Guilty.
Just give us your 5 points already.
Guilty.
Yeah.
I don't want to reduce a sermon to a TED Talk, but here's what I will say. TED Talks are 18 minutes for a reason. That is the kind of optimal attention span. At least that's what it was when TED Talks were invented. I don't even know what it is now.
Yeah.
But I think you have a better shot in engagement if you just aim for a little shorter arc. We all have our preaching arc. Aim for a little shorter one.
Yeah.
And I think it could have more impact.
And maybe a little shorter, a little tighter, right? So keep it moving. I love the Gospel of Mark, immediately and then and next, and just keep the ball rolling. Don't get too bogged down in something, and you'll be in good shape. And as you just said, give them the mac and cheese. That's your way of saying, don't get fancy. What do you say in the past episodes? Don't put any jalapenos in there. Like,
that's right. It's not the time for jalapenos.
Don't get cute. It's not going to be cute if you try to get cute. It's going to work against you. So the gospel is good news. Let's present that. If the eyewitnesses are right about Jesus' death and resurrection, man, that means that death does not have the final word. There's eternal life, that Jesus gives us a way that we really can trust and walk in, and Jesus can change your life, and he will if you invite him to. That's your Easter sermon, right? Preach it.
Preach. And then next week we're going to talk more about preaching on Easter. So we have a lot more. We have a lot more to say.
We have a lot more to say.
Preaching for a visually engaged culture. Okay.
Yes.
Number fourth area to kind of think about as you're working towards Easter is the difference between creating moments in a service and just having music in the service. So usually around this Easter services, both traditional and contemporary, spend a lot of time thinking about what's our special music going to be. And that's good. That's fine. I think there's a lot of great opportunity for special music. But I'm going to be honest, I think a better use of our energy is thinking about not just what special music, but how we creating a moment, a special moment through music and worship dynamics that lead to actual movement spiritually. In the book, chapter 5 in the book, I talk about closing the gap in worship, and I was talking about we're in midterm elections have kind of started, but if you've ever seen those political debates or town hall meetings, and nowadays they have like a control group, and they have what looks like a seismometer, gauging their engagement.
It's the applause meter, Jason. It's just an updated version.
And so but if you were to take that seismometer view of people during most worship services, I think it'd be pretty flat, emotionally flat. And you create, again, in the book, I talk about the dynamic worship model, but you create moments when you change the dynamic of emotion in the service. And the biggest or easiest way to do that is through music. So how are we creating moments for people to respond to the word or to celebrate the word or whatever that is, So a moment for us that we do almost every week is we'll go from worship music into a pastoral prayer time that leads into a personal prayer time, or we leave time for people to pray. We explain it, we pray, then we pray at the end. And then when we come back, there's a transition video that has to do with the sermon, and then we preach. So that section, we've gone from a high energy opening, and then now we've kind of brought people down energy wise, but now they're sort of focused and ready to hear the word. That helps us create a moment that we think can lead to movement. So if you're thinking about your Easter services and what is it that you want people to respond to, is it a gospel presentation? Well, then how can you accomplish that using music to help you get there emotionally? Right? How is that going to be different than the energy that you start with? When maybe you start with Lift High the Cross or some other, big celebration hymn or song. How do you create moments? I just think there's something to this because it turns out you make a more dynamic service. It's not just thinking about what special music we're going to use. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How do we, in a certain sense, create opportunities at different levels to engage with God's presence, right? It's one is sort of outward praise, and maybe one is more reflective and personal, and then communal around the Lord's Prayer or something. But creating, like you were saying, an arc to it. We just adjusted our order of worship not too long ago to add more worship at the end of the service, kind of in response to a felt need, and we just were curious. And this is anecdotal so far to this point, but we've had more people coming forward for prayer in the last month and a half or 2 months than we've had in recent memory and that I could ever think of. And I think it's partly because we've rethought the end of the service to be more about engaging with what you've heard and what God's doing and being responsive to that and creating a spiritual opportunity in people's lives.
Yeah. And then about music, I would say this, because this happens in our traditional service more, is that every once in a while a choir anthem will be in Latin or something, and I'll have the translation in there. And I just say, at least for Easter, don't do any new songs that you haven't done before. Pick hymns that they can sing without a hymnal.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in another language, it's just not really accessible. So I think that may be more appropriate for the Lenten season, because I know there are some wonderful anthems that might be in Latin or some other language. But I think for Easter, it's all about accessibility. So think about your music selections as somebody who doesn't really go to church. This will be a familiar enough hymn that they'll be able to catch on and sing along. I just think that matters.
What do you think about one of our strategies this year is to introduce, to actually sing some of the songs we're going to be doing on Easter in the weeks leading up to Easter.
Yeah.
So we did some last week. We're going to do some again this week, and then on Easter. And especially if they're newer, I just think it gives your congregation familiarity then, so that they can sing it out. You know, if you want to do something a little different, make sure your people at least have had access to it and some familiarity. That's more on the contemporary side of things. But, just making sure that what you're going to put out there, people can engage with and not kind of have it go over their heads or just be out of left field.
No, absolutely. And I think that's good. We actually have, it's like a 3-week rotation. Or we'll introduce a song one week, we'll feature it another week, then we'll skip a week and we'll come back and do it again. So, and then now it's in our rotation. Yeah. That's good. Okay.
Cool.
And then lastly, 5, we start with first impressions, last impressions. And this is about retaining your Easter guests. I'll say this before I kind of get to this. There is nothing more powerful, in my opinion, when it comes to reaching new guests or getting them engaged, that when they see passionate, authentic worship of God, that is the most attractive thing that they can see. It's going to make them want more. It's going to make them want to have that. So don't feel, I was never big on the whole seeker-friendly movement. I like the thought behind it, because it's a lot of the same thoughts we have about how do we make people feel at home. But at the same time, I don't think there's any substitute for just a white hot worship of God. And so, anyway, last impressions, give them a reason to return. Maybe you start a sermon series that's super engaging, that helps them kind of where they're at, and say, hey, if you just came to church this week for the first time or first time in a long time, I want to invite you next week to join us. We're doing this series on 4 ways to let God lead your life, or whatever it is, something that's really accessible. And sermon series are great, because if they enjoy the first one, even if they can't come to church, they'll probably engage online because they want to finish the series. And that's just a way of creating engagement over time.
Yeah, creating some next opportunities. Sometimes I'll land on, not every week, but a lot of times in my sermon, I'll say, and next week we're going to come back and we're going to look at this passage, and this is what we're going to talk about. It doesn't always work, especially if you're trying to create a moment at the end of the sermon. But there's an opportunity to say something like that on Easter. We can't wait. We're going to do this next week. Maybe it's even a point within your sermon that you're trying to just say, hey, here's where we're going next, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. Or if there's an event or something coming up, point to that.
Right.
Point to that.
Yep. And this is all another way of saying create a pathway of engagement using Easter. So use Easter as the opportunity to invite them to what's next. That's really what we're talking about. And you may have intentionally right after Easter some things set up. I know a lot of churches do. Maybe you want to have an alpha class, or maybe you want to have a special small group that meets for 4 weeks or 5 weeks. Maybe you want to offer coffee with the pastor. Hey, if anyone, I'd love to get to know you and connect with you. So if you go right out to the Narthex or whatever you call it, the lobby, the table, and sign up. I'm taking appointments for coffee visits this week. Love to connect. No pressure. We'll see you at Starbucks or whatever. Or what we do is we hope that Easter is the beginning of people thinking about their own faith, and we start to asking about baptism. So like, hey, baptism is this, incredible first step of the journey of faith. And if you've not been baptized, we'd love to talk to you. In fact, this summer, we have a baptism event at the beach, and we love you to think about coming and be a part of that. Right. So you're just inviting them to engage over time, which I don't know anything else other than, if you're welcoming, if you're authentically worshiping Jesus, trying to authentically live Christian faith with one another, and you're inviting them to engage, that is what creates momentum in churches.
Yeah. And the only thing I would add to that, which is implied in all of that, is what we've heard from Kara Powell and others, that warm is the new cool.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the slickest whatevers. Just be a warm, authentic, engaging community that loves Jesus, and that's going to speak for itself. And there's a few extra things that you can do on Easter that we've talked about today to really make sure you're being attentive to that. And I think that's going to go a long way. So appreciate you bringing these areas of focus for us, Jason. And, we're rooting for everybody out there. I hope Easter is a time where you connect with people, and they connect with God, and then they show back up and want to get involved. So that's our hope.
Yeah. And listen, pastors, you're probably so well into prepping for Easter that you need none of this. But if you lasted this long, I just hope that that it's helpful as you're just thinking. I mean, maybe there's one or two things that spark an idea.
Totally.
That, okay, oh yeah, we can do this. That's really what this is. It's Jesse and I dialing in our Easter stuff and talking about it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. And I pray that God blesses you as you prep for Easter. And I mean, there are people in your community that the Lord is calling upon, and they're going to show up unexpectedly on Easter Sunday. And God has entrusted them to you. So I pray that your church makes the most of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Jason or Jesse at reclaimleader.com. And next episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about preaching. As we say every week, ministry is hard. It is so much better when we do it together.